Welcome back to Behind the 90 with Nneka, where we go beyond the surface to uncover the stories, struggles, and strengths that shape who we are. Today's episode is one that speaks to both pain and resilience. We'll be diving into a powerful conversation about the trauma of growing up in a home that hoarded and the lifelong impact it can have on a child's sense of safety, self-worth, and love. My guest, Angie, lived through this reality in her household. Now, as an adult, she courageously opening up about her journey from the chaos of clutter to clarity of healing. This episode may be triggering for those who've experienced hoarding or emotional neglect, so please listen with care and compassion for yourself. Together, we'll explore the emotional weight of growing up in a survival mode, what forgiveness can look like after trauma, and how reclaiming peace begins from the inside out. Let's begin this important conversation with honesty, empathy, and hope. Before we get started, I want to define what hoarding behavior is. Hoarding behavior refers to a persistent difficulty discarding or parting with possessions, regardless of their actual value, due to a perceived need to save them. It's more than just clutter or collecting. It's a psychological pattern that can cause significant distress and interfere with daily living. Today, my guest, Angie, has so much courage to bring awareness to this topic because I'm sure there are other people that have experienced a loved one that may hoard, or you yourself may have challenges with hoarding. So this is a very sensitive topic. I will definitely handle it with care. Welcome, Angie. Thank you so much for being a guest again on the show. I really appreciate your dedication to spreading awareness on very important topics. So often we shy away from talking about things like this because we don't want judgment, but I think in order for us to heal and rise above the pain, we have to talk about these things. So how do you feel today being here?
I'm excited, and I just want to say thanks again for having me. I think my whole journey is definitely to be able to share so I can help others. So I'm excited. It's a tough topic for sure, but I'm excited to dive in and to help others who may have struggled or had someone who they know struggle with it.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Like I said, I don't take for granted you taking the time to talk about this. I couldn't do it without you. Let's just jump right into it. When did you first realize that your home environment was different from other children's?
I think at first when I was younger, it wasn't as bad when I was younger, but as I got older, I would say more so around like 9, 10, when I used to be able to go visit my other friends, I would look and I'm like, wow, their household is definitely different from my household. Like there was living room, dining room, just everything was put in place. And I noticed as I got older, it just seemed like there was always paper, bags, or just different things that normal homes wouldn't have. Okay. So that's when I really started to know it's like, okay, there is a difference. There is a difference here from my living opposed to my friends and other people that I know or family members that I know that aren't struggling or didn't have a hoarder in the household.
Okay. Do you mind sharing who was the hoarder in your household?
Yes, my mother.
It was your mother?
Yes.
Yeah. So can you tell me what kind of relationship did you have with her before you noticed that it was an issue? What kind of relationship did you have with your mom?
When I was a kid, like the attachment that I had with my mother was very close. Like I had a very close relationship with my mom because my dad, he was always the one who was working and taking care of things, on the outside. And my mother was that person at home. She may have worked like a part-time job here and there, but she was the main, making sure everything was taken care of at home. So our relationship in the beginning was a good relationship, I would feel, between mother and daughter.
Okay. Was she the type of mother that, taught you how to do chores around the house? Did you see her doing things around the house like cooking and cleaning? Did you witness that?
Yes, growing up, I did witness that, which would probably be shocking because she would clean up and she would do small things around the house, but it was only to a certain limit. It wasn't like she was going into in-depth cleaning around the house, but it was just like the necessary stuff, like washing the clothes, cooking dinner, maybe straightening up the table here or there. But like I said, until I got older, I really started to notice what it was. But being a younger kid, you just thought, oh, just the regular normal stuff, you know. She would mop, she would, do vacuum here or there, but it was only in the space that she had that she could use and not the areas that were cluttered.
Okay, so she started, so it wasn't so much of a cleanliness
Right,
issue.
right.
It was more of just a collecting,
Collecting.
and just kind of clutter, things
Yeah.
being cluttered around the house.
Kind of like packing away almost.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did it start in just like one room, or was it just kind of she had spaces all over the house? How did it start? If you can remember, as you got older and you had come to kind of realize, oh, this is different from what I've experienced with my friends. Like, what age was that when you saw a difference?
Well, I would say when I was younger, it probably had to be like 5 or 6. I remember my current room being cluttered, and I remember my parents' room being cluttered. Those were like the main rooms. The living room, the dining room. The dining room had stuff, but it wasn't like to the point of up to capacity. It wasn't like that. It was like maybe odds or ends in certain spots. But the main rooms that I can remember from probably like the age of 5 or 6 was their room and my room as being the area of like kind of like stuffing away, putting stuff. Those were the rooms that had the start of the clutter or the start of like packing, where I know stuff was being packed away or in bags.
Okay.
Yeah.
What type of things were being packed away?
From, I guess, from going from then to now, it could just be clothes. It could be papers. It could be papers from me being in school. Like, it could be stuff from kindergarten all the way until maybe like middle school, just papers of like newspapers, magazines, just different stuff, clothes. Those were like the main things that I knew that was like being hoarded. Like back then I didn't know that it was hoarding, but that now knowing that it's hoarding, those were like the main items that were being hoarded. Those would be like, I would say, the bulk of items.
Yeah. So you're 5 and 6, you start to notice, like you said, just the packing things away in your room
Yeah.
and in your parents' room. Did you ever ask your mom? I mean, you're pretty young, so at what point did you start asking questions? At what age did it kind of come to you to say? At what age did you become curious about it?
Okay, so I would say, because during this time, we ended up moving from our apartment to a townhouse. So when we got the townhouse, a lot of the stuff from the apartment did get thrown away, like stuff that we didn't need and things like that. And of course, coming from a smaller apartment to a bigger space, it was like for me being younger, because at the time my brother was born, so we needed more space anyways. So I would say between the age of probably going into 10 and older, that's when I started to see, okay, the townhouse went from one state where it was like just the essential things that we needed. Because like I said, from the apartment, a lot of things got thrown away and stuff got put into the basement. So maybe that might have been why I didn't really notice. But I would say around the age 10 or 11, when we did finally move into the townhouse, I started to notice that the space that we once had now was beginning to be cluttered again. And so now I'm adding it up like, okay, how are we going from the living room and the dining room being barely nothing to now all these bags again? Like, where is this stuff coming from? It would slowly go from like bags under the table to papers and stuff on top of the table. And I remember being a kid, I used to always be like, I would love to set the table for dinner, because we used to do that. Like, I would like to set up the table for dinner so that by the time my dad got home, he could come sit down at the table. And after years, it was like there was no room to even put anything on the table anymore. The table was consumed with mail, paper, newspapers, books. Like, there was not a dining room table anymore. And that's when I started to realize, like, there is something deeper. Because when we tried to clean it up, it was a fight to clean it up. And I didn't start to understand, like, what is the issue? Why can't we just throw away? This is old. And so, kind of just to kind of sum it up, that was that eye opener for me. Like, okay, there is a bigger issue now. And now that I'm getting older, I want my friends over. I want to have company. And I'm noticing, yeah, my friends' houses are not the same as like how my house is. So me wanting to clean up is now causing triggers for her, because she's like, I'm not throwing away my stuff. But it's like, I want company. I want to have people over. So I think that's really when stuff started to kick in. And I still didn't know that it was hoarding. I just was like, why won't she throw it away? What's the issue?
What's the big deal?
But still, even in that moment, vacuuming, mopping, that stuff was still being done. So it wasn't, mentally, it wasn't connecting as like, what is this issue? Like I said, once again, that was until I found out when I got older what it was.
So I want to get back a little bit. You talked about when you, and I guess another family member, tried to kind of clean things up. There was a reaction. What was the reaction when you tried to clean things up from your mom?
The reaction was, I need this stuff. It was like, oh no, I need that. And then if we will, Mom, this is old, this is old. No, I need that. And it's like, this newspaper could have been dated back to 1999. Why do you need that? For some reason, everything was a sentimental value to her. And to us, who's living in a household, it was like, this can go. And it was like trying to just understand. Like I said, I think mentally it's confusing, because it's like, what is the need for this? We don't need this. Yeah. So, yeah.
So you say you had a brother, because you're the oldest, so you had a younger brother,
Mm-hmm.
and you had your dad.
Yeah.
How did they respond to what was happening?
I think for them, my dad, he just always contributed to, like, your mother likes to hold on to stuff. I don't think he knew, or my brother, because my brother was, of course, younger, but I don't think my dad even knew the right term of what it was either. Mm-hmm. He just knew your mom can't let go of stuff. My brother, I think once he got older, he started to realize, okay, there's an issue here too. But I don't think it affected him as much as it affected me.
Okay.
And for me, it was like way deeper, because I was older and I wanted to have that life of just, enjoying, being a middle school, high school person, and just having friends over and having that luxury. Because if I can go over somebody else's house, how can I explain, oh, you can't come over mine? Yeah. And at one point I did have company, because I used to try to do like a mass clean. But when I knew that the fighting and trying to go back and forth, I just knew it wasn't worth the back and forth after so long. I gave up. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to have company. I'm just going to just chalk it up as this is what it is.
Did your friends ever ask why, or did they come over and it was just an unspoken thing? They just knew when they did come over, they saw that it was a lot of clutter, and they just kind of gave you an out and not pressed you about coming to your home?
Yeah, I think it was that unspoken thing. It was like, this is different, but we're not going to mention that because it's our friends.
That's right.
But I think it was that unspoken. I think the friends that I did have over, they just knew it was something different, but it was like, we're not going to mention it. And I didn't want to mention it. And so that's just what it was,
Yeah. Do you feel like the hoarding that you encounter with your mom, as a young person, did it interfere with your relationship? Because you would think mother, daughter, go shopping, you're doing things together. Did it impact your relationship in terms of spending time together?
Yes, it started to, and I think this is the hard part, because it started to make me feel like I was pulling back from her. Because I felt like, you're hurting me. And she didn't see it.
Okay.
And it's like, I'm hurting because you don't understand that this stuff is hurting our family. Because now my room is confined with stuff. Now their room, once again, is confined with stuff like at how it was at the apartment. But now it goes deeper. The basement is confined with stuff. The living room, everything is like packed into, because in a townhouse, you don't have but so much space. So it's like tight. It's like you have just enough room to walk and go to different spaces, but it's not room to be comfortable. So that started to make me disconnect from my mom. I started to look at her a certain way, and I think everything from then on just caused a trigger. It was just like I was automatically like one little thing and it triggered me. Like I would be upset about one little thing, each time.
Yeah.
It was just like every small little minor little thing, it just instantly I just was uncomfortable or irritated.
Okay, so the relationship couldn't necessarily flourish because there was such a hyper fixation on
Yeah.
her things, whether it was magazines and papers and saving things from
Yeah.
your childhood
Yeah.
that she could not part with. So, but in terms of how did you maintain good friends? Because when you think about a friendship, it's when you're that age, it's that exchange. I'm coming to your house, you come to my house. What happened there? Did you lose friendships because you weren't able to reciprocate the relationship by whether it was a sleepover, whether it was coming over for dinner? Like, how did those friendships suffer as a result of your living situation?
I don't really feel like my friendships had suffered, which was a good thing because a lot of people were just like, they just chalked it up to what it was. For me, it just made me sink in more because I just felt like I would like to not be the only person just always going to everybody else's house. I would love for somebody to come and visit. But no, honestly, none of my relationships suffered. I think people just genuinely loved who I was, the close friends that I had, and they just were willing to just, take it for what it was.
But outside of that, what type of person was your mother? Outside of the hoarding, how would you describe her personality?
My mother, she's just a sweet, loving person. She is willing to care and help anyone at any time. My mother is very soft-spoken. She's very funny. She just has that very caring and loving personality. And that was kind of hard because it was like for her to I would think she would recognize the hurt by her always loving and caring and wanting to other people to understand and just, that understanding and caring for others. I would think she would care for me the same way and want to fix the issue. But it was like, it's like, Mom, you are this person, but why can't you just be that for me, which she's a great mother, overall, she's a great mother. But that part really tore our relationship up. I don't think she just knew it. I don't think she recognized it because she's a sweet, loving, caring person, but she just didn't know how to get the help or didn't even know how much it was affecting us. She didn't realize it.
Right. What other ways did it affect you in terms of psychologically? Did it impact you emotionally, psychologically, growing up in a household where someone hoarded? How did it impact you that way?
I would say mentally, I was hoarding thoughts. Hoarding thoughts. It wasn't stuff because now in my own house, I'm quick to throw up something out. I'm quick to be like, oh, I don't need it. If it's clothes, I'd be quick to donate it. If it's stuff that I don't need, I can clean a spot out. But the hoarding transferred to me in my thoughts. I would hold on to things. I would not be able to forgive others. It was hoarding of thoughts that affected me versus hoarding of things.
That's interesting. So would you say that it kind of, so you say you're hoarding thoughts, whether it's unforgiveness, whether it's ruminating on, someone treating you poorly, ending relationships without being, like you say, if you're hoarding thoughts, you're not able to release those and work through. So you're not even looking to even work through anything.
Right.
Because I'm just going to hoard these thoughts because it's almost like my protection.
Yep.
You've gotten you accustomed to that. Did you suffer any anxiety and depression?
Yes, even as I got older, I didn't know that that was what it was, but anxiety and depression hit me heavy, and once I could understand and got the diagnosis of what it was, like, okay, I'm suffering from these things. And I guess, and what's crazy is that all of it is in connection, without even really realizing it.
Okay. Yeah. So today, I'm going to go kind of like back and forth. So you have, like you said, you come from a two-parent household. So you have your loving father who just probably adores and loves your mom,
Yes.
and didn't necessarily want to challenge what he was seeing. Did you ever see him challenge the behavior at all?
It wasn't more so like challenge, but what we would try to do, like if my mom wasn't there, because my dad was very vocal about why do you keep collecting stuff? But there wasn't a plan of like, how can we attack this plan of trying to fix it? And that's why I think back then therapy wasn't talked about like how therapy is now. Like I'm thankful that therapy is definitely more talked about so that people can get help for these situations. But back then I don't think my dad knew that she needed therapy.
Right.
But what we would do is when she wasn't home, we would just clean up ourselves. And she would get home and be like, I know somebody moved my stuff.
She could tell that.
She could tell. But that was the only way that we could survive in that moment. Me and my dad, and then once my brother got a little older and kind of understood, he would help. But we had to, because if not, we would have been buried in stuff. Like, that's really what it
So your
came
room
down
was
to.
not your room,
No.
really?
Mm-mm. Majority of the stuff in my room was my mother's.
Okay.
Yep. The closet was all her stuff. Boxes in my room was her stuff. Yeah, I tried to just make as much space for my things as I could, but majority of the things in there was hers.
Yeah. So what was the reaction? You mentioned, when she would leave, that you guys would throw things out. Because again, you guys didn't know how deep those connections were to those things. What was her reaction when she would come home and you guys had thrown some things out?
She would be upset. Now that would be the time my mom would be upset. She would be upset. And she would pinpoint certain things that she couldn't find. And she'd be like, I know you guys threw it away. I know you guys threw it away. And we were like, Mom, that could have been anywhere. But she just knew, because I think that middle pattern of like something thrown out. So something very important is in the trash. And my mom she would be upset. She would be upset. And she would even say sometimes before she left the house, like, please don't touch my stuff. I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to clean it up. And we knew she wasn't going to come back and clean it up. But I think my dad got to that point of like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to argue. I think we all got to that point at one point of like, we're just going to not touch it. But back then, whatever we could throw away, back when my dad did have that energy and that fight to try to fix it, he would throw stuff away when she wasn't there. And it sounds harsh, but it was like, if we didn't, we would be suffocating in that stuff.
Yeah. Would you categorize it as mild, moderate, or severe hoarding?
I would say between moderate and severe.
Okay.
Because by us cleaning it up, we don't necessarily know how bad it could have got. We know it could have got there, but by us cleaning it up, it kind of may have, it could have, I would say it could have got to a severe point, but because we were trying to counteract it and basically diffuse it as much as we could, it was more as a moderate. When I was living there, it was moderate. So I would say between moderate and severe, because if we would have continued as we did at some point, it could have got worse, And even when we stopped, even when we had that pause, she was still bringing in stuff. And it was kind of hard, because sometimes we would stop and not clean up, and then sometimes we would be fed up with it, and then we would throw stuff away. It was like an up and down. It was just an up and down. But I think trying to keep the peace in the household at some form, but it was difficult.
Yeah, so that had become somewhat normal. Not that you wanted hoarding to become normal, but when was there ever times Well, I should probably ask, when were there times where things were just, you could just relax and exhale? Were there times that you could just do that for yourself when you were living in the home?
When I wasn't at home, that was the only time.
That was the only time.
Yeah,
So when
when I
you were in
wasn't
the,
at home.
okay. So when you were in the home, the feelings were,
But yeah, I was flustered because it was like, I don't feel like I have nowhere to really go.
yeah,
And even in my room, I couldn't feel comfortable.
because it really was
Yeah.
at your room.
Yeah.
It's where you laid your head to sleep. How did you even how did you sleep in that space? Because like you said, you becoming a teenager, you want to make the space your own, but you weren't able to do that. So as a teenager, do you feel like you missed some growing steps because things were just kind of at a halt because you weren't able necessarily to spread your wings in that space?
Yeah, what I did actually, which is kind of interesting, I would put things on my wall. I would put pictures of like cars and homes and just different things that I wanted for myself. And I would put it on the wall. And that was, I guess, semi part of like peace for me because I knew one day I'm going to have a home that looks like this. I know one day I'll be able to drive a car like this. And sometimes you just have to, when you're in a space, you just have to dream for more, even though you see what you're living in. So in my room was my bed. I had a TV. I had a dresser with my stuff, and everything else was my mom's. I had a little radio. I would listen to my music, but my piece would just be my wall, posting stuff on my wall, and knowing that one day I'll have these things because my current situation I'm not comfortable in, but I've always wanted a house that I could be able to raise my family in and have that form of peace.
Yeah.
So
Was there this, urgency to leave that home, become an adult,
yes,
and leave the
I
home?
was like, I'm gonna find a way. And my mom had this real close friend who she used to work with, and she told my mom, she said, I don't know exactly what's going on, but she said, your daughter's gonna leave. Your daughter's gonna leave. It's gonna be, she kind of explained to my mom that there will be a wedge between us because she could tell I wasn't happy. And I knew right then because my mother's friend, she was very spiritual. She had that really close, she would always pray and she would just had that very, I feel like her spirit, she always had something in her spirit. And she told my mom that. She told my mother, like, there's that wedge and your daughter's going to leave. She's going to leave. And in my head, I was like, the first exit I get, I'm out. I'm leaving. I'm like, I don't know what it looks like on the other side, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, and you just didn't, the space
Yeah.
just was not welcoming. Like you said, your
Yeah.
mother was a loving mom.
Yes, she
but-
was.
Yeah, but having all
The
this
stuff was made it worse. That outweighed her.
Yeah, it
The stuff
outweighed it.
outweighed her.
You couldn't even necessarily concentrate
Mm-hmm.
on the love. And I'm sure she was probably distracted too and not being able to give you really what you needed because she was so consumed with those things. And so I'm glad you mentioned a friend because that was my next question. Outside of your family, were there friends? Did your mom have friends? Were people coming over to visit her, or did that kind of was halted because of her hoarding behavior?
Yes, my mom has friends, but my mom would not allow anybody over. Now, we would have, my aunts have been over before the house got, like I said, before the house got to worst capacity. Like if we were cleaning up and let's just say my cousins would come over, that would be the time like my aunts would come and visit. We might, they might come over, we might watch movies and stuff. But other than that, my mom's not letting any close friends over.
Okay, so you didn't experience her with friends.
No. I mean, I knew my mom had friends. I would know them from like work, from her job. Like I said, 'cause she would work part-time and stuff like that. But it wasn't like her friends is coming over. That is a no-no. No, if it's not her sisters, close family stopping by. And like I said, we straighten up a little bit with what we could straighten up within that situation. But anybody close, they not getting in. Okay. They not coming in.
So what would the close people who were coming over, like your aunts and uncles, like what would they say? What they were saying?
They wouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
But I also noticed too that there's also certain people in my family that also probably struggle with hoarding as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So
So
it's a history, a family history of
yep.
it.
That's what I know now.
That's what you know.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So, but of course, back then I don't think anybody was going to mention it. It was just like one of those hush hush things, I'm not going to question it. We're not going to mention it. I think that was the initial, but also at the same time, maybe because other people are struggling with it as well and
Themselves,
don't
yeah.
realize it.
That's true because sometimes things become so normalized. It just, you live with it and doesn't
Yeah.
seem out of sort. But what the sad thing is when we see that, let's say a person's not a hoarder and they come over to the house repeatedly and they see that, it's sad that we don't know how to approach the situation. And I think in a lot of cultures, it's hard to initiate the hard conversations when we see with our own two eyes that something just don't seem right, but we're afraid to approach the situation for fear of the person getting upset with you and being mad, all the things. So we avoid having those tough conversations because of what we say to ourselves about if I approach this,
Yep.
it's going to be an issue. But how beautiful would it be if we could actually approach the hard conversations and help people? Because I think a lot of times what happens is it just goes unsaid.
Yep.
So today, when you think about, you're a married woman with children, like even before you got married, like what were your relationships like? So you moved into your own space. I want to talk about that. You move into your own space. What was the experience like when you move into your own space? You're not in your mom's home, your parents' home. Like, what was that experience for you?
And just kind of backtrack a little bit, when I did officially leave the house, I ended up moving in with an ex, which, well, not an ex, he was a boyfriend at the time, which was, it went totally left from how I wanted it. But after that, I had kind of lived with, after that relationship had ended, I ended up living with my daughter's father when we were together. And so those years when we were together, I was living with him. And then when me and him and our relationship ended and I finally got my own apartment, it was like a breath of fresh air. Because when you're not living with anybody else, and none of those situations prior to when I was living with the boyfriends that I was with at that time, those living situations weren't bad. But as far as like, keeping the house clean, like we were all on the same page. But when I was able to get my own apartment and make my own rules and have things set up like how I wanted it to, it was like a breath of fresh air, because it was like I don't have to be confined with all these things. It was like I can make my home how I wanted it to. I can make that space for my daughter and it was just like I can finally have that space. And I loved it because my living room, I had that set up how I wanted it to. And it was like whatever I wanted to throw away, I could throw away. Whatever I wanted to keep, I could keep. Like it wasn't no question, it wasn't no fight back. So I feel like the beauty of it was really when I finally got my own place by myself, just me and my daughter. And it was truly a breath of fresh air. It was like I can now just finally have a peaceful home that I can come into and feel that peace and be able to relax after a hard day of work and don't have to worry about the stuff. Right. So it was really freeing for me. It was really freeing. I mean, the pain of the issue doesn't go away, but the future of it was like, okay, I can finally get on track with.
Yeah. So when you say the pain of it, what do you still carry today?
I think I still carry just a lot of that. It was just the pain of like, why did it have to be like this? Like, why wasn't she able to get help sooner? And why did it have to tear our relationship up so bad? It's like, I didn't want that for me and my mother, but it definitely, it just tore me up because of how I look at my mother. Like, it's not her, it's the stuff. But the fact that I feel like she put the stuff over me.
Okay.
And I never could let it up. Like, it always just stuck with me.
Yeah.
Like, she chose the stuff over
That's how you feel. Yeah.
me and my dad and my brother.
Right. I'm sure definitely I can see why that would kind of, keep you consumed in terms of when you think of a mother-daughter relationship,
Yep.
grieving the loss of what could have been. I'm sure, the hoarding behavior interfered with a lot of what you guys could have done together as mother and daughter. And I'm sure it's not something that, she wished for or prayed for herself. It was something that was out of control. So today, now that we know that's what it's called, is she acknowledging that that's what it is?
Yeah, my mother is actually, she's in therapy, and she hasn't really told people that she's in therapy, but I feel like it's a start. It's a positive start. And by me also being in therapy, I have been working through the issue as well. And I am praying that that can help our relationship get to a better place, because she does realize, okay, I understand. Back then, I didn't know how much pain it put on you, but now I'm trying to get better. So the fact that she is understanding what the name of it is and getting help for it, it makes me feel better for our relationship to get on track to a better space.
Okay. How is your father supporting her? How are other family members, and how are you supporting her as she comes to understand the why behind her behavior?
My dad, they have been working alongside with her current counselor as well, and they've been keeping up updates, and they have been, to my understanding, taking piece by piece of like different areas of the house and working on what to keep, what not to keep. And also, we have been trying to set up like family meetings, because I feel like family is definitely important when you have a hoarder in the household. So we try to have every other month meetings with our family. We try not to stretch it out too long, but we all, life is busy, so we try to make sure that we have some form of family meeting so that we can talk about the progress and talk about things within our family, just to for us to all be on the same page and on the same track of being in support of her, trying to
Right.
support her.
That's wonderful.
So
That's beautiful.
I feel like that is one key to when you have a hoarder in the household. It's like, once they acknowledge it, be able to continue to stay on top of it, and to try to just support them in that moment as well.
Yeah.
Which may be hard, I get it, but it'll help out in the long run.
Yeah. Okay. I want to fast forward a little bit as we come to a close. I know you have your own family, your own children. How has what you encountered with your mom, how has it impacted, how has it influenced how you interact with your kids in terms of chores and cleaning? Like, what are the lessons that you instill in them?
Especially with the kids, I always try to instruct chores for the kids. I want them to understand that having a clean space is important. Not saying that you can't, not saying that it has to be a strict, like, at all times you can't play or you can't do, but understanding the terms of, I try to teach my daughter, like, especially when we go through her clothes, hey, we're going to go through the things that you can't wear anymore so that we can donate it to kids that are less fortunate. Or, hey, with the toys, we're going to help and give the toys to other kids that need it. That's the structure that I set in the household. We all have chores. We all try to come together and clean, because I want my kids to understand that the space that you live in is supposed to be safe and peaceful. When I don't think a lot of people understand too, as a hoarder, you put a lot of safety issues there. Safe, if there's a fire, how can you get out? If there is, there's so many different factors when it comes to safety as well. So I feel like having a clean space is very important. And I like my kids to understand that. And they also practice that as well, understanding that you don't have to keep everything.
Right.
You just keep certain things and you give away the others, So that's very important as well.
Okay. I know earlier in our conversation you mentioned you don't hoard, but you hoard thoughts. Can you explain that a little more?
I feel like when I think of like hoarding thoughts, it's just a constant, my mind is collecting. Like there's no exit for the thoughts. It's constantly like I'm going back to something old, back to something that happened to me. It's like it's a constant rotation of just things that I don't let go of. And I refer that as being like hoarding of thoughts. When you throw something away, you're not supposed to go to the trash can and get it. You're supposed to be like, okay, it's in the trash can. And for me, it's like if I forgive somebody, using this as example, it's like I would say I forgive, but I'm still holding that thought. Like I remember what you did. I remember that this happened. And so I feel like that is what hoarding of the thoughts is for me. It's like not releasing things, just as well as my mom wasn't throwing away the stuff that was trash. If you read that newspaper, okay, clip an article out, but don't keep the whole paper. You don't need it.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the same thing. It's like with your thoughts, it's like, yeah, I may have been through that and you understand how to handle that for the future, but why are you having this in rotation in your mind? Like it's not feeding you any positivity. It's only negative.
Yeah. When I think about, from a psychological perspective, when people hold on to things, it's something internally they say to themselves. It's like a form of anxiety. It says, if I release this, then, people connect with releasing things with something bad. Or I got to keep this because it's something good. It's going to bring me something, or something bad is going to happen. I think sometimes, by releasing it, there can be a internal narrative of something negative or something sentimental. I was reading something about a person who was a hoarder. They had lost, they had started off a person who was very neat and clean. And when somebody passed away, the hoarding started. And so by collecting things and holding on to things, there was that way of kind of gaining control. But when you release something, it's almost like experiencing a loss all over again. Once you have decided that there's sentimental value to this thing, and I don't want to lose it, because I don't want to feel like I felt when I lost that person or I lost something. So you tend to hold on to things that are of sentimental value because you don't want to feel that pain of the loss. And so I don't know if your mother has some type of loss in her life, but I'm glad that she's in counseling because that's so very important to understand. This is what the Behind the 90 is about, is 10%. What you see on the top, the 90% is the story. And the story will kind of tell like the why to behavior. And I think a lot of times people don't want to tap into that because it can be pretty painful. For my last question to you, what would you tell someone, a child or somebody as an adult, if they grew up in a hoarding household? What advice would you have for them?
Ooh, that's a tough one because I feel like as kids it was hard because you just don't know the terminology for it. What I will say is that it's a lot of patience that's needed for someone who's a hoarder. I think that's the best way to say it. And a lot of times the parent doesn't get the help, or the person doesn't get the help who may be in the household, or the family member that you see. I always recommend as well too is, for me now identifying it during, I want to say I knew the terminology for between high school and as I got older, is that, it doesn't hurt for the younger person to suggest counseling because counseling is made available for a lot of people. Do understand that there might be pushback and do understand that it may not change, but there is a lot of patience that is needed for someone who is a hoarder because it's deeper. The person feels like they need the stuff. The person feels like they can't part with it. And I would also say watching the show Hoarders helped me as well.
It did.
And I would definitely say I would recommend someone who wants to know deeper about hoarding because I was able to see that I'm not the only one.
You're not
There's
alone.
other people that have hoarders in their family. So I would also suggest watching Hoarders as well because it started to show me different situations, different family dynamics, people that were struggling with certain things. Like you said, maybe a death and it caused someone to hold on to things. I think that kind of helped me kind of understand more so what is happening and knowing that it's more of a mental illness
It is.
versus someone just wanting to hoard all these
Yeah, you
things.
can't just snatch all these
Yep.
things away from them
Yep.
because, like you said, it's
Yep.
deeper
And
than what we see.
hoarding can also, a hoarder could also hoard things in their car. They can also hoard things on the outside of their house. It can get as bad as like hoarding inside storage units. Like there is different ways hoarders can operate. And I feel like once you do the research and really find out how to help that person, you can start to be able to just pull away the pieces on how to, solve it.
But what about for you, for that young person? What could someone have done for you? Is there anything that someone could have did for you? How about saying that right? Is there anything someone could have did for you?
I think getting help would have helped me because this is years and years of like the trauma of it is so it's like all the years of what she was doing caused years of trauma on me. So someone being able to get help back then when I was younger would have freed me from so much that I deal with today that is connected to the hoarding. And I'm not saying everything because yes, in my life there's, different things that I dealt with on my own, but somewhere it always goes back to hoarding. It always goes back to that trauma of like when this was happening, that is why the result of our relationship is like it is. So it's like if she was to get that help back then, I'm sure the dynamic of our relationship probably would be a lot different.
Now, I understand that, but think about your father. When you think about little Angie, what did you need? You probably didn't know then, but what was something that someone could have said to you? Although the situation may not change,
Yeah.
what could someone have said to you that would have brought you some comfort? Like I said, granted that the situation may not change immediately, but what were there words? Was there time? Was there anything someone could have said that would have given you some sense of, you hear me, you see me, I understand you? Like, what could someone have done to give you that comfort that you needed? Whether it was your father, whether it was an aunt, whether it was a friend's mother, I don't know. What could someone have said to help you?
I really don't know if anything could have been said. I think I was looking more so to the action. Like, even if my mother or my dad was to say, like, let's just say if my dad was to say, hey, I understand that your mom has a situation and just know that we love you and that we'll get through it. I would have received it, but I needed to see action. I think it was more so the pain was coming from the fact of I keep speaking it out that it's uncomfortable, but no one's doing the action to fix it. So I don't think that anything really being said would help because I felt like the words of I'm sorry was, I'm sorry that this has to be this way, or, it was just like I need to see action. I don't think it really was anything that could be said.
Yeah. And I get what you're saying in terms of action, but even if it was a function of people just validating your feelings, like you have a right to feel how you feel.
That's true.
This is not normal.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not your fault.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, can they back it up with actions? A little bit, but, it's a slow process.
Yeah.
We're trying to help someone who's a hoarder. But I think when you think about a child that may be in a similar situation, just acknowledging that this is not what you should be going through at your age. You should
That's
be,
true.
Playing with your friends. You should be able to have sleepovers. And honey, I am so sorry that you're not able to do that. We're trying to get help for your mom. I think if someone had they had taken more time to educate themselves. And I think back then, a lot of people aren't educating themselves then.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many resources out there now. A lot of people don't know, not to blame anybody,
Right.
but a lot of information is not out there when it comes to mental illness because it shows up differently for everybody. And not a lot of information was out there back then. But when you think about now, there's information out there so that we can get the help that we need. So I'm just thinking of other little Angies out there that may be going through it, and just having someone say, hey, I see you, I hear you. You don't deserve this. And we're going to work to make things so make sure that you are all in the sports that you want to be in, the clubs, putting that energy into making sure that even if things aren't where you need them to be at home, we're going to focus your individualized needs. We're going to, outside of the home, we're going to make sure that happens for you, just to kind of balance it out until we can, work these things out.
When you put it that way, that would have probably helped. Like, that would have probably been, just putting myself back then, I guess, understanding and being aware, like, we understand this is not okay. That would have, I feel like, yes, that would have felt for anyone who is young and in that situation, somebody recognizing it like, this is not okay, probably would have helped for sure. Just understanding, like, but I think just in that moment, like you said, especially with not knowing the verbiage of what was happening, but like you said, just somebody acknowledging that, I think that would have been important. I think it would have helped if somebody was just like, we're going to figure it out. But no one knew how to figure it out.
No one knew how to do that. But today there are so many resources out there. And I think it's important that, and we'll, at the end, I'll kind of type some in the caption, some of the resources that are out there for hoarding behavior and support groups. But Angie, it has been a wonderful time talking with you.
Thank you.
I appreciate, your courage to come out and talk about this very important topic of hoarding, growing up in a hoarding household. So I want to say thank you again.
Thank you for having me. I definitely always love the experience and always want to help somebody in the midst of it. So
because that's what it's about. It's not about putting anybody down. It's really about creating some awareness and building community around certain topics. So thank you. Thank you for joining us for this deeply moving episode of Behind the 90 with Nneka. Angie's story reminds us that healing isn't always neat and easy, but it is possible. From the pain of her past, she's creating space and peace, but for purpose and freedom. If today's conversation touched your heart, know that you're not alone. Many carry the silent wounds of growing up in chaos, and taking the first step toward healing is an act of courage. I want to thank Angie again for her vulnerability, honesty, and strength. Her willingness to share her truth, give others permission to begin their own healing journeys. Thanks for joining today's episode. If you enjoyed the story time, don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a review and share with your friends to help us reach more listeners. Stay tuned for more insightful stories. Until next time, take care and keep exploring new connections with us.